Thank you very much once again for joining us. And I must say that we started the Maharana Pratap Annual Geopolitics Dialogue 2023 today morning. This is our second dialogue. Last year, our first Maharana Pratap dialogue focused on terrorism and counterterrorism. And we had some of the finest experts on terrorism from across the world, including Dr. Yoram Schweitzer, Dr. Rohan Gunratna, and several other people from India also, like General Hasnan, Ambassador Trignath, etc. This year, our theme is India's role in the changing world order, and the Ministry of External Affairs is the co-host in this event. And we are really lucky to have some of the amazing panelists today morning. We had session on India's role in the changing world order, global expectations and Indian perspectives. Ambassador Sajjan Har chaired it, Stephen Nagy, Ambassador Daniel Carmon, and James Dorsey spoke in that session. Dr. Arvind Gupta, former Deputy NSA and Director of Vivekananda Foundation, gave the keynote speech and highlighted various aspects that India should now focus on, including things like Ayurveda. And he really emphasized upon that ideas that Ayurveda focuses on a comprehensive health and it should become the part of the G20 debates and various other things which have roots in the Indian cultural and civilizational ethos. And today we come to the last session of today's online Maharana Pratap dialogue. And this session is very crucial because India has been facing this narrative and information war. In an ultimate analysis, we are facing this war for the last 250 years. And majorly after the India got independence, we got a very systematic subversion of India's cultural civilization and religious ethos, be it in the academic world, in the media world, or in the mainstream public policy discourse. Over the last 5 years, last 10 years, these attacks have become very overt and they've intensified, be it the case of CAA, NRC, or the case of the abrogation of Article 370, or most recently, this BBC documentary. So these lobbies propagating and projecting fabricated lies, deceit, and sabotage in the form of nice articles, documentaries, and research papers have become very active, and they have posed a serious challenge to India's civilizational and cultural harmony. So today we have this amazing panel of experts discussing this idea and how these actors play out, especially including Jamaat proxies in the US and the global lobbies working against India. And these experts are from different walks of life. I'll introduce the moderator and the session chair today, Ambassador Vishnu Prakash. He has been India's High Commissioner to Canada and India's Ambassador to South Korea. He is one of the finest diplomats of India and an expert voice on various issues ranging from the narrative warfare to India's geopolitics and trade issues and various international engagements. He has spoken at our platform earlier on Russia-Ukraine war, and I guess on Quad once before this. Okay, and he has been a great friend of Usanas Foundation. He has always been very positive and very helpful. Whenever we have requested him, he has gladly joined our forum. Today also, we are very lucky to have him. Sir, over to you. And now I'll leave it to you to introduce the other speakers, I guess, because you are the session chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abhinav. Good morning to Abha. Good afternoon and good evening. Namaste. It's such a pleasure to be with all of you. I would welcome my co-panelists and also compliment the Usanas Foundation, especially my good friend Pandya, for hosting this timely symposium. Our theme of our session is Narratives and Perspectives, India's Information Challenges. I'll dwell on this for 5 to 6 minutes and then cede the floor to my co-panelists. Prime Minister Modi recently said that India's time has come and the driving force of country's development journey is Yuva Shakti or dynamic youth. According to the IMF, the global growth is projected to dip from 3.4% last year to 2.9%. However, India remains a bright spot. I, for one, firmly believe that there is no parallel in the world for the successful strides in nation building taken within a democratic framework by a country of India's size, complexity, and diversity in the face of daunting challenges, both internal and external. Centuries of subjugation and oppression had reduced us to a state of penury and hunger, which was further compounded by a very traumatic partition. Few in the world had wagered on India's success. That we have accomplished what we have today is less of a miracle and more a saga of tenacity, self-belief, and courage of conviction. As we look ahead with optimism and ambition, it is in order to briefly reflect over the past few decades. I mean, all of you know or should know that in 1947, our economic growth rate was down to 1%. We accounted for less than 1% of the global GDP. Literacy was a poor 13%. Fast forward to 2023, and today our GDP is at least 6% of the global GDP, if not more. That is not to say that not, it's not worth bragging, because we are also amongst the G20 countries, the country with the lowest per capita income. We have lots of challenges, but we are the fastest growing major economy. We are seen as the world's pharmacy. We are in the midst of a digital revolution, making it a part of our daily lives, particularly at grassroots levels. We have a proud Indian diaspora, which is doing very well, which has created an enviable niche for itself. And we are emerging as a net security provider in our region and beyond. We are a member of the Quad. And we currently have assumed the G20 presidency, are making meticulous preparations to showcase India to the world and be the voice of the developing countries. Political observers often speak of different phases of India's foreign policy, ranging from idealism to realpolitik. Well, that may be true at one level, but India's foreign policy is also imbued with remarkable continuity, and that is was and remains the essential tenets of our foreign policy, which is quest for autonomy in decision making, belief in partnerships, not alliances. What has evolved, I would argue, is not so much polity, but our capabilities, resources, and confidence to take an independent worldview as well as speak up for national interests and global good. Our outlook is naturally shaped, as it is of other countries, by our developmental and security imperatives, geography, history, colonial experience, demography, and cultural heritage. We were quick to sense the reality that no country other than India will look out for our interests, and also that political expediency, self-interest, and economic power, not necessarily equity or justice, shape the outlook of responses of each nation, regardless of the posturing or packaging. That said, our engagement with the Committee of Nations is qualitatively deepening and expanding in every respect, even though the world is between orders, going through a very turbulent phase with multiple challenges but few solutions in sight. It is gratifying that the re-emergence of India has been widely welcomed the world over. The United States, said the US State Department recently, supports India's emergence as the leading global power and a vital partner in efforts to safeguard the Indo-Pacific region as a region of peace, stability, and growing prosperity. Well, there are certain exceptions to this, and that is China and Pakistan. I will not get into their positions because which is very well known. But also notable sections of Western media and left liberal intelligentsia, not to talk of a handful of Indians who have joined the bandwagon due to a personal agenda. Abhinav spoke of a certain mindset, but what is relatively new is the shrill anti-India, anti-Modi, and anti-Hindu rhetoric by sections of Western media, left liberal think tanks, and so-called secular intelligentsia. India bashing and Hindu baiting is becoming a favorite pastime of some. Some experts have pointed out towards an informal alliance between global Islamists and Western elite. I leave my co-panelists to judge on that or certainly share their views. In view of this segment, everything about India is bad. The judiciary, the democratic framework, the government, the law enforcement agencies, and of course the majority community, which is the worst. If there were any pretensions of objectivity, those have been mercifully dropped by outfits like BBC, still suffering from a colonial hangover. And I've never forgotten the Economist, which preaches India how to vote and tells Indians which government or administration is suitable for them. Uh, During the Punjab crisis, when Hindus were being shot or Pandits were being hounded out from Jammu and Kashmir, these circles maintained a deafening silence. When Indians or Hindus in particular are targeted, it is their karma or fate or destiny. When they speak up or assert their rights, it is aggression. India and Indians in their worldview need to be submissive and do as they are told because the West knows what's good for little brown people. It smacks of a kind of anti-Semitism which also colors the outlook of the same or similar elite group. Opinion is divided on how to counter this bigotry. Should we invest? Big question in my view is that should we invest our resources and efforts in having a dialogue with the deaf? I've always maintained, even as the spokesperson of the Ministry of External Affairs, that there is little purpose, in my view, to contest them, other than giving them the oxygen of publicity. We should concentrate instead on what we are doing and doing well, focus on developing and strengthening India, forge partnerships with like-minded nations, and continue to be a factor in furthering global peace, stability, and prosperity. I am convinced, ladies and gentlemen, that India's juggernaut will continue to roll forward, notwithstanding the Cassandras. I'm reminded of Gandhiji, who said, when you present something which is new, the world first ignores you, then it laughs at you, then they fight you, and then you win. Thank you very much. With these words, it's my pleasure to invite Abha Shankar, Director of Research at the Investigative Project on Terrorism, who has considerable experience in the fields of intelligence and counterterrorism. Dr. Abha Shankar, the full floor is yours.
Thank you, Ambassador Prakash, and thank you to the Usanas Foundation and to Abha for inviting me to this presentation. And it's a pleasure and honor to be a speaker on this esteemed panel. I'm going to be focusing on US-based Islamist groups that have been pushing a malicious anti-India campaign, especially after the Modi government's voiding of Article 370 in Jammu and Kashmir and the passage of the Citizenship Amendment Act in 2019. Islamists have been cherry-picking facts and pushing a one-sided narrative of Muslim persecution and genocide in India. Many of these groups have their origins in or ties to the Muslim Brotherhood and the Jamaat-e-Islami. Both are global Islamist movements. And they advance an Islamist agenda by undermining counterterrorism efforts, claiming they unfairly target Muslims, shutting down dissent by calling their critics Islamophobes and playing the victim card, supporting convicted Islamist terrorists. As you can see, there are very strong parallels in the way Islamists operate in the United States to how they operate in other countries, including India. Many of these groups share deep and close ties to Islamist countries such as Turkey, Pakistan, Malaysia, and Qatar. Who are these groups? There are very many of these groups operating in the United States, but I'm going to focus on some of the key ones. There's the USCMO, or the US Council of Muslim Organizations, which is an umbrella group of over 40 Islamist groups. And they have been engaging in anti-India advocacy, especially since India's action in Jammu and Kashmir. They met with members of the OIC, which is the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, and with the United Nations. They met with then President of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, Masood Khan, to pressure India to lift the then lockdown in Jammu and Kashmir and to push for self-determination in the region. There is the Council on American Islamic Relations, which is CAIR, and it operates as a civil rights group in the United States. It has its origins in a former Hamas support network called the Palestine Committee that was created by the Muslim Brotherhood in the 80s to advance Hamas, which is a US designated terrorist group, to advance its political and financial agenda in the United States. They have platformed individuals such as Kashmiri journalist Rakib Nayak, who has denied that a genocide of Hindus ever took place in Jammu and Kashmir. He says it is a Hindu nationalist construct. They also were behind or advocating very strongly an anti-India resolution in Chicago. This was a couple of years ago to basically portray India as repressing its minorities. There's the Indian American Muslim Council, or IAMC, which was formerly known as the Indian Muslim Council. It was founded by Sheikh Mohammed Ubaid, ostensibly to fight Hindu extremism in the wake of the 2002 Gujarat riots. It advocates very strongly against India. It routinely hosts anti-India events and congressional briefings, and advocated along with CARE within USCIRF, which is the US Commission on International Religious Freedom, to get India designated as a country of particular concern. There is the Islamic Circle of North America, ICNA, that has its origins in the Jamaat Islami. It was founded by Jamaat members in the 60s and 70s who emigrated to the United States from the subcontinent. And they basically created ICNA to propagate Jamaat Islami's ideology. And its mission is to establish Iqamat ad-Din, which is establishment of the religion in the United States. They have a long history of advocating for Kashmiri self-determination. They have lauded Kashmiri jihadists such as Sayyid Salahuddin, the Hizbul Mujahideen commander. They have platformed speakers such as convicted ISI, lobbyist Ghulam Nabi Fai, and others. Then there is Justice for All, which is an offshoot of ICNA. It was established in 1988. It's headed by Abdul Malik Mujahid, and it has an initiative that focuses on saving India from fascism. They've also launched something called the Prisoners of Haq initiative that eulogizes Kashmiri radicals. They have platformed people like Ghulam Nabi Fai, Masood Khan. They also had on their panel an individual named Ahmed bin Qasim. He's the son of Kashmiri jihadist Ashik Hussain Faktu and separatist leader Asya Andrabi. What makes these groups effective? They've been around for a really long time, since the 60s and 70s, and they've kind of reconstituted over time. New organizations have been created, and they are very well funded. They've made deep inroads into US academia, government, and government-funded institutions such as USCIRF. They've built alliances with progressive groups in the far left to amplify their voice. There's a lot of public ignorance about a number of these issues, which have a very complex and nuanced history. And Islamists kind of use this as an opportunity to misrepresent facts and advance propaganda. They also have a very strong lobby that wields a lot of influence on the Hill. So with this, I'm going to conclude my remarks, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abha. That is very powerful, and you have portrayed the situation as it obtains in the US, which is quite alarming. Maybe later, when it's possible, if you could dwell on why are they doing that? Why are the Western media, intelligence, and think tanks making common cause with the extremists who are hurting the American society also? So your views on that would be very welcome. But thank you. With this, I would request Mr. Arun Anand, who is a notable journalist and an author, for his remarks. Floor is yours, Arun.
So I would start with, an anecdote. So in a couple of months back, in a winter afternoon, I was sitting in Delhi in a coffee shop with the Paris bureau chief of New York Times. And he had come to India. I have been a chronicler of basically Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, which is considered to be the ideological mentor of BJP. And Narendra Modi, the present Prime Minister himself, has been a full-timer with RSS before he came into the politics. So anyway, so I was sitting with him, and then he was asking me, and then I explained to him that how RSS functions and what RSS does. And then he tells me, it's too good to be true. I don't believe you. So I told him, okay, so why don't you choose a spot and you go into any of the RSS camps, or meet any of the RSS functionaries, or so he said, no, I don't believe you. I said, you are free to go, you are free to visit, you are free to write anything, but at least you make an effort, and basically, you meet a few more people and you see it yourself, and then you write. So he said, no, I don't believe you. I think it's too good to be true. I said, then okay, it's fine. So this is, how, and I think, in 1920s, it all started much before the anti-India narrative across the globe through media outlets. It started much before the independence. In 1920s, we had a book called The Face of Mother India by Catherine Mayo. And in 1927, when Mahatma Gandhi reviewed this book, so he gave it a very appropriate, title. He said that it's a drain inspector's report. And I believe, in the global media, I might sound a little harsh, but I think what we are witnessing about India, and especially post 2014, are generally basically the drain inspectors reports. And I've been a journalist for almost 30 years now. And I'm surprised to find that they don't even follow the basic norms of journalism, where you have to speak to all parties before you publish a report. I'll give a few examples in terms of how this whole anti-India narrative is built. And it's not only in UK and US. In the German media outlets also are, especially the Deutsche Welle, whether it is Bloomberg or Reuters, or so all largely the Western media has been, targeting Modi and Narendra Modi and the BJP government. I'll just read a few interesting headlines which will give you a glimpse. First, I'll talk about the BBC documentary on Modi. We know that Modi, the Modi question, they have not spoken to even a single person basically from the other side. And then you have we had the Leicester violence in UK in September 2022, and the BBC and the Guardian, they promoted this known radical Islamist and the kingpin of this violence, Majid Freeman, as a community leader. In fact, BBC later accepted in one of the reports that it had fallen for false propaganda. And I think it is for the first time, the Indians in UK actually went on to demonstrate against and held a protest against the Guardian and the BBC reporting. Then generally what they have been, the Western media has built a very simple narrative that there is a Hindu majoritarian government, it's an anti-Muslim government, and the India is doomed under them, and especially the minorities. I'll give you a very interesting headline. In April 18, 2021, New York Times has a headline, "This is a catastrophe. In India, illness is everywhere." They are talking about COVID. But what was happening in US, what was happening in UK, what was happening in Europe, there were no screaming headlines about that. Then on August 15, 2022, now we come to a news agency. News agencies generally don't release opinion pieces, but they are so, kind of gung-ho about, targeting Modi and Narendra Modi and India and the current government. So on August, and see the date, August 15, the Independence Day of India. So they release an opinion piece in Bloomberg which says Modi's India is becoming a reflection of Jinnah's fears. Then in Guardian recently, the way now they are, as Ambassador Vishnu Prakash was saying, they are trying to tell us basically how we should behave politically, whom we should vote for. So we have seen latest, the Guardian recently published a report about this yatra, about this long journey taken by Rahul Gandhi, the leader of opposition. Rahul Gandhi's yatra, how a 2200-mile march revitalized India's ailing opposition. The opposition is not saying that, it has recovered, but Guardian is very keen to tell Indians, that the opposition has recovered. Now come to the journals like Foreign Policy. And on May 8th, 2022, they publish a report which is titled, they publish a paper which is titled, article, "The World Ignored Russia's Delusion. It Shouldn't Make the Same Mistake with India." And then the slugs says, "Hindu nationalist ideologues in New Delhi are flirting with a dangerous revisionist history of South Asia." So these are the kind of things, there are n number of examples, but I'll just, I didn't have to, work so hard to write separately that what actually basically what is the Western narrative. The Deutsche Welle has the German media outlet. It did a piece called the World of Narendra Modi. It was done in November 2021. It aptly tells you how all the media outlets are building basically this anti-India narrative. And I'll just read out. So they write in the World of Narendra Modi about him: "Equally adept at playing a dove-like pacifist and hawkish commander-in-chief, Modi has a score to settle with history. He wants to restore India to its original purity and secure its central role in the world order. In India, he is accused of wanting to transform the world's largest democracy into an anti-Muslim, anti-liberal Hindu state." So this is basically the Western narrative. I don't need to explain it anymore. And I'll just quickly tell you one interesting fact, that Indian Institute of Mass Communication, one of the premier institutes of journalism in India, they have a peer-reviewed journal called The Communicator. Earlier this year, some time back, they had come out with a report, with a research paper analyzing how the foreign media reports about India. I'll just give you one example. They identified, went through more than 3,000 articles, and they came across the most used words in headlines when it comes to writing on India. There are 10 top words: fear, hate, violence, riot, Hindu, Muslim, Kashmir, cow, mob, protest. So these are the top 10 words which are used in these headlines. And why? One of the key reasons they are doing is that it is also bringing substantial traffic for them. When they do this kind of sensational writings and when they do this kind of sensational reporting. So from March 2019 to March 2021, the New York Times had
30 seconds.
Yeah, 22%, in share in Indian market. The growth, the rate at which they grew in Indian market was 22%. Similarly, the other media outlets also. So I think there's only one solution to this, and this is the last thing which I want to say, that India needs to build its own global media platforms. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What you have just mentioned, one completely agrees with that, and clearly their minds are made up. And it is a gutter inspector's report, but the inspectors proliferate. And the question also is, you're right that we should have our own narrative, but question that I pose to the panelists is, should we react? I somehow find that, we give a new lease of life to controversial pieces by reacting. And if we do not react, they are likely to, kind of just wither away. But that is something that I would leave my co-panelists to comment on if and when there is an opportunity. With this, I turn with great pleasure to Burzine Waghmar. I hope I have done justice to his name or pronunciation, which I try to remember. Burzine, if possible, you may also comment on, if you would like to comment now or later on what the co-panelists have said so far. He's a visiting India fellow from Royal United Services Institute and a faculty of SOAS University of London. We are delighted to have you with us. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Ambassador Prakash, and my best thanks yet again to the Usanas Foundation and the Ministry of External Affairs, Indian Foreign Office, for permitting me to share my thoughts once again this afternoon. In this presentation, I do not have a written typescript, but I will have excerpts to adduce from previous presentations and sessions and fora where I have presented these views. In some cases, perhaps speaking in vain, in other cases, not so. Sorry, to get across what this topic and leitmotif of our thematic discussion today entails. So let me start with this. India's Kashmiri Muslims may ruefully realize what The Economist 22 July 2017's special report of India and Pakistan at 70 stated, quote, whereas India's men in uniform face intense scrutiny in Kashmir, Pakistan enjoys a far freer hand, decimating whole villages across the NWFP and Balochistan, a province in sporadic revolt since independence, close quote. Distraught relatives are long used to locating cadavers of missing relatives stuffed with human feces, according to both Baloch and Pakistani human rights NGOs. There is no precedent for this anywhere else in the Muslim world, and certainly not in either Palestine or Kashmir, insurgencies which animate Muslims and the liberal acolytes, in a word, apologists, who display correspondingly far less reticence to talk about such murderous mendacity when Muslims do the oppressing of oppressed Muslims. And coming to the other side of things and the hellhole that Xinjiang has become, need I asseverate, but I will nevertheless, Beijing's Sunni Uyghur citizens aged between 12 and 65, according to Human Rights Watch and reported in the Times, London, 14th December 2017, are registered on a national biometric database including eye scans, DNA samples, and fingerprints. Some 19 million residents of Xinjiang's total 21 million have had their body data collected in 2017 alone, which led Sophie Richardson, China Director of Human Rights Watch, to comment that this scheme, going by the name Physicals for All, should be rephrased Privacy Violations for All, to say nothing of bans on beards, giving children Islamic names, as well as unauthorized halal logos in restaurants across the provincial capital, Urumqi. Attacking the West for its iniquities remains the default position, hence the stunning silence of the left on Syria, China, Ukraine, and elsewhere. That dependable left-wing rent-a-mob who always gather at a safe distance to decry NATO, globalization, India, Israel, the United States, free trade, imperialism, and other forms of wickedness that they believe rules-based open democracies perpetually exemplify. Former CIA China desk officer Christopher Johnson tellingly put it in a Financial Times op-ed, quote, China intends to socialize us rather than become more like us. And the debate in the West has taken on a harder edge, and people are asking whether 40 years of engagement might have been a sham, close quote. And here from the Times, London Times, 24th October 2018. Hidden from the gaze of the world, an authoritarian state is brainwashing a large minority of at least 11 million and making it bend to the government's will. That must be of concern to leaders of other Muslim states. The fate of the Palestinians stirs rage across the Islamic world. Yet not a single Muslim head of state has spoken out in support of the Uyghurs, despite the attempts to criminalize them. China is building up problems for the future, but so too are Muslim states that look the other way so as to not jeopardize Chinese investment, close quote. The scurrilous agenda of the liberal left within academia and commentariat, who distorted the promulgation of the Citizenship Amendment Act 2019 in India, and how the predicament and peril of historic non-Muslim remnants was overlooked for the ostensible plight of Muslims, given that the two-nation theory was enunciated by votaries of just such a homeland. Yet progressive salon sorts, and hard left sorts, and middling left sorts harp upon the exclusion of a majoritarian grouping, whose status and security in what are assuredly Islamic polities was never doctrinally or politically questioned, in contrast to the penurious, insecure status of non-Muslims, and where non-Muslims are never full-fledged citizens, because Muslims in an Islamic polity are assuredly first among equals, primus inter pares. Permit me to conclude with my op-ed for the Sunday Guardian on Pakistan's Green Book, as issued by the military, as we all know, which was entitled Passing Pakistan's Green Books, the 2020 edition, wherein I stated, and now I quote in extenso, Senator Mushahid Hussein's clarion call is written for the forever disaffected, driven by the drivel of an Arundhati Roy or Pankaj Mishra, for he states, quote, 70% of the battle is promoting a cohesive and credible Pakistani narrative, which we can sell at home and abroad. He also darkly declared Pakistan's countenance for a long-term strategy against Indian hegemony by a united front of all Kashmiris and the link-up of the Kashmir resistance with other insurgencies inside India. But there are risible moments when a certain Farzana Shah, for example, a Peshawar-based journalist, portends American and Israeli military bases in, quote, Indian-occupied Kashmir, whatever that means. And she also rebukes the Pakistan Foreign Office in that same piece not to be driven by shallow patriotism, but true humanitarian grounds in establishing a dedicated and permanent desk on human rights violations in India against minorities. So in meandering out of this wonderland, one concludes recalling former Indian Chief Justice P.B. Gajendra Gadkar, but then Vice-Chancellor of the University of Bombay, who delivered his broadcast talks, the Sardar Patel Memorial Lectures on All India Radio, December 1966, where he invoked the legally exercisable convention of rebus sic stantibus, which New Delhi must pursue as the principles of arrested action to frustrate Pakistan's disingenuous designs on the province of Kashmir. His legal brief posited India was exonerated, briefly speaking, from obligations to the UN Security Council, despite Nehru's implicit as early as possible plebiscite pledge. Subsequent developments, due to Pakistani insincerity and non-compliance of preconditions laid down by the Security Council and standing resolutions, perforce prevented India from fulfilling what it initiated, ergo, no plebiscite. And no plebiscite, Ambassador Prakash, but flights. Kashmir lockdown, and I wind up with this singular exemplum. Go Air, right through the lockdown, operated flights from Srinagar to Sharjah, the United Arab Emirates. So how does one account for Indian passport-bearing Kashmiris flying in and out of Srinagar, and that too on a carrier founded by the Quaid-e-Azam's great-grandsons who never left for the land of pure but stayed put in India? Thank you.
Thank you very much. You have come up with some home truths, which is a reality which we know and we should know. But the question is, how does one talk to these people whose minds are made up? And why are their feet not held to fire? Why are they being given a free pass? We'll come to that momentarily. And even the Xinjiang problem, the Uyghur Muslims, this has been going on for so many years, and now that certain countries are speaking out, and we know why they are speaking out and why they were not speaking out earlier. So the timing is interesting. The political dimension is there for everybody to see. With this, I have great pleasure in inviting Savio Rodriguez, the founder and editor-in-chief of the Goa Chronicle, for his remarks. Savio, the floor is yours.
At the onset, let me thank Abhinav Pandey and his team of Usanas Foundation for inviting me. It's an honor to be with the panelists, and it's a great pleasure to be with Ambassador Vishnu Prakash and to share a few insights with him. As my name suggests, I come from the Christian community in India. I am a proud Indian Christian, and I believe my roots are Hindu. What I mean by my roots being Hindu, I'm not talking about it from a religious perspective. I'm talking about it from a geographical perspective. And that's really what is really the most crucial aspect of this discussion today. And the reason why I say that is because for decades, not years, not months, not weeks, but decades and centuries, the white man, or the white sahib, as one would term it, has always believed that when they came across their waters to colonize different countries around the world, India being one of them, they brought with them their understanding of what was the best for the world, and completely forgetting the culture, the practices of the indigenous people of that land. And that is the commonality you find across all colonized regions, whether it's Asia or whether it's Africa. And interestingly, it's important to note that when the white man came, the white man related or relied on demonizing everything that was indigenous in nature. So the narrative hasn't changed. The narrative today is the same narrative that would have been there 100, 200, 300 years ago. If you come to my place, which is Goa, you had a different narrative out here with the Portuguese, which is again another European colonizer. To them, anything to do with Sanatan Dharma, anything to do with Hinduism, anything to do with the culture or the religious beliefs of the Dharma of the indigenous people was considered to be heretic, was considered to be against the law of theirs, and considered to be ungodly. And that is the reason why they unleashed what was called the Goa Inquisition. Today, that narrative hasn't changed. In 2018, the Archbishop of Delhi made a statement which loosely meant Christians are in danger in India. Why did he say that? I did ask him that, and I faced a lot of repercussion from my community. However, many of them now see the point I'm trying to make. If in the 5 years from 2014 to 2019, there have been a certain amount of atrocities that happened between communities, Hindus and Muslims, Muslims and Christians, Christians and Hindus. Does that generalize that every Christian in India is living in danger? It does not. If 0.001%, because the so-called cases that were filed in the police station, some genuine, some could have been fake, was roughly about 500, 600 in 5 years, 5 to 6 years of both these rules. You had almost similar cases that were filed in the UPA time as well. Would that mean that the UPA regime was also not safe for the Christians in India? How does 500 cases vis-a-vis 2 crore and more people in India, the Christians in India, is there even a comparison to that? Yes, there will be clashes that will happen on religious lines, and those clashes continues in all parts of the world. If you look at data from UK, US, and Canada, the most tormented minority in those areas are not the Muslims, are not the Hindus, but the Jews. They face far more atrocities. But do you see narratives being built in against Canada, UK, and US saying that the Jews are in danger, like the Christians and the Muslims are in danger in India? The reason why this narrative is built is because the white man, when he came to India, brought his trade, but he also brought his religion. And that is very important, because wherever they went, the trade and the religion went together. Even if you look at Goa or you look at the rest of India, it's the trade and the religion that went together. Today in India right now, you have evangelicals working on a concept known as church planting. There are about 110 different evangelical organizations that are doing that. Church planting is they're planning to put about 3 lakh churches in India to convert the Hindus who are demon worshippers into followers of what the white man thinks is the religion of the people and of the present and of the future. That is the narrative. It is through religion that they want to spread fear, they want to spread divide, and on the basis of that is where they want to actually go ahead and control the economics of the nation. Now, India's Sanatan Dharma, which binds every Indian together, is not driven by religion. It's driven by the cultural ethos of India. That is what they are afraid of. They are afraid of Indians, irrespective of any religion or caste, coming together, bound by the cultural ethos of what India stands for, of what Bharat stands for. The very idea of sacrificing your life for Bharat Mata frightens them. And that is the narrative that they want to destroy. That is the truth that they want to destroy. So if you look at the common thread in every article that comes out, as Anand was saying, is hate, is demonizing of Sanatana Dharma. It's of demonizing Hindus. It's about saying that the Hindus, which are a majority, are against the minority, which are your Christians, your Muslims, and somehow they forget the Parsis and the Sikhs. But let me ask you, if today every single of one of us, by the Constitution of India, are daughters and sons of Mother India, then where is the divide of majority and minority? Is not the definition of secularism acceptance of no religion in matters of governance? The irony is that in India, we follow secularism, but the definition of secularism is so prostituted in India that we term it as the acceptance of all religion in matters of governance, which it's not. The clinical definition is an acceptance of no religion in matters of governance, which means that the government looks at you as a citizen irrespective of your religion, irrespective of your caste. And that is what they are afraid of. That is what the enemies of India are afraid of. They are afraid is that if India starts to see the world in a united manner, they start thinking unitedly, then progress is not far away for India. And we have started that progress under the leadership of Narendra Modi. And that progress, that unity that comes with binding each other as Indians more than anything else is what the West is afraid of.
Can I request
And
you
that
to
is
please
why
wind up, Savio?
they go into the most used tool against India, and that is communal disharmony. They have tried it before and succeeded. They will try it again, and they think they will succeed. And if we have to beat them, and if we have to change that narrative, then we have to start thinking as Indians.
Thank you,
Not
Savio.
a
Thank
Hindu,
you. I need
not
to
a
interject.
Muslim, not somebody from Goa, not somebody from Karnataka, but an Indian.
Thank you, Savio. Thank you very much. That was very bold, but you stated things as they are. That is not to say that we don't have aberrations. We have aberrations like any democracy has, any multicultural society has. But we also have the ability to look at ourselves, introspect and correct and move on. But the thing is that a big question is, why do those who are glass houses throw pelt stone at the others? And my answer to that is that because they can. And so thank you everybody for very insightful perspectives. We have about 20 minutes to go. Can I request the panelists to respond to three brief questions, and you have 120 seconds to respond, each of you. I mean, I'm being very generous with time, as you can see. The question is, why is the Western segments of this group, that we are the Western group, why is it that they are pandering, doing what they are doing? What is the motive? And how does one react to that? What is the solution? And lastly, if possible, why are they getting away with that? Why is there no accountability? And then I'll request Abhinav for his comment or question. But first, Burzine.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. And looking on from this side of the pond, where Abha is and where the cultural wars are taking a terrible toll on the American social and intellectual landscape. And I'm sorry to say, Abha, we are getting these headwinds come this side when Britain has nothing to do with these god-awful cultural wars, but they are having their pernicious effects on academia too. But Mr. Prakash, you asked this and everyone needs to understand this. In the current context, which Abha referred to, please understand this and this alone. If you take nothing else away from this seminar, Muslims are the new lumpen proletariat. In the Western liberal WASP Jewish context of things, the Anglo-American liberal elite, progressives, not just the hard left, I'll come to that in a moment, but even within the left and the center left, Muslims are more sinned against than sinning, and are considered the new lumpen proletariat who ought to be afforded all immunities, which were once, obviously, historically speaking, by this very same left, not given to their own Jewish minorities. And somehow they're making up time for that now. Secondly, remember that the Islamists are just like the Marxists. It's a transnational movement with globalist agenda and ambitions. The socialists and communists have been routed. They're on the ash heap of history, and one wishes that they still remain so where they are since 1991, but they will continue making inroads and subvert democratic societies because they can afford to do so with the glimmer and lure of so-called progressive welfarist politics and ideas. In this, politics makes strange bedfellows, as the adage goes. The hard left has found common cause with Islamists who are driven by the same discipline and fervor and for social engineering that they wanted to enunciate. But here's the catch, and the irony, if not the howler of it all, is that these progressives on the hard left were always unabashedly agnostic. They had nothing to do with religion and always poo-pooed it as the opiate of the masses, as Marx would have them believe. That's part of their gospel. But here, they have been willing to put aside that major aspect of their doctrines, of socialist doctrines, and are in cahoots with a lot who are unabashedly religious and have a confessional agenda and a very retrogressive, obscurantist, medievalist, patriarchal agenda at that.
That is indeed very true.
And the left has no problems in being in cahoots with that. So why then? Why that is happening, Burzine, you should be asking. Because in Islamists, they find a natural ally to bash up the West and the whites. Here you have a group who can take out American targets, use American embassy walls as target practice, kill and drag marine bodies on the streets of Somalia and the like. And so what the West has, the hard left agenda has always wanted is to undermine the Anglo-American West and Western Europe, not just the Anglo-American, Anglo-Saxon world. But that is what they wanted. And here they find natural allies in Muslims, or Islamists, I should say, not Muslims.
Thank you. Point very effectively made. I appreciate that. Thank you. Abhinav?
Thank you very much, sir. Basically, I'm going to just address, like you raised a question, what should we do if these things are happening? Ideally, what should we do? Well, I would just want to make a point that some of these attacks, like, okay, they are very systematic and they are very structured in their nature. And the agencies over there, I would rather prefer to call it the weaponization of academia. These things have been perfected over centuries, okay, over the last 100, 200 odd years, and they've become very nuanced and very systematic. But when it comes to countering, first of all, I feel that we should not be reactive. We should be active. Secondly, even when we are speaking, it's mostly about rhetoric and raising a pitch. Where are our research papers? We don't have like good quality research papers, good quality publications, reports. All these reports, like, well, agreed, some of them they're bashing India, but they're so nicely done, even in terms of discriminatingly using the data. They are so good at it that they're able to prove their point. For example, I'll just state one fact, that after the abrogation of Article 370, New Yorker published 120,000 word article. I don't remember the name of the author, but that article became viral across the world. They interviewed just one journalist, that Rana Ayub. She was traveling with the New Yorker journalist to Kashmir, and based on those, some of the field sightings, they published that article. And that article was staunchly against India, completely full of lies and false information. But then it was written in such a style that it made an appeal. But what have we done on our part? Like, nothing happened after the abrogation of Article 370. Peace prevailed, and people are genuinely moving away from the separatist and militant narrative. But have we ever produced any good research paper, any quality report on that? So I wrote one paper for strategic analysis, which is a Routledge publication, and that paper was based on analysis of post 370 developments in Kashmir. Now, that was something which I did on my own, but there was no institutional support. But in the Western case, when such reports are coming, there is a massive institutional support for them. Even in the case of CAA, NRC, our communication strategy had some major faults in that. So I guess, I mean, our academia has to take up the initiative, and even the intelligence thinking has to be broadened, and especially while dealing with these issues. We have a very straight-jacketed, a very cop-like mindset, while dealing with the intelligence issues. These kind of attacks, they fall in the domain of narrative warfare. And I guess we need a very advanced and a very a slightly modern kind of intelligence cadre to understand these issues and deal with these issues.
Well, thank you. I agree with you that we need to have a better way to put across a narrative and do it effectively and do it in a way that the world today understands through the social media and through research papers and through perhaps our own maybe TV channels or other media organizations. That is very true. Arun, would like to make a comment?
I just want to add, because a lot of people are raising this point in the chat box also, that
you're not audible.
Yeah, is it okay now?
Yeah, better.
So, see, I just want to address this point that whether we should be reacting or we should not be reacting to, what the Western media or academia, the narrative they're building, especially the media. I think you cannot escape in the, see, earlier there was not a digital world. Now we have a digital world. They do influence, the opinion in our country also. So I think there is no other option. We have to have a balanced strategy where you counter them also, but you build your own narrative also. So there has to be a sense of proportion in terms of, countering their narrative, giving a counter narrative to what they are saying, and also building narrative of your own. So I think that's the way to look at it.
Very well taken.
Can I just make one more point?
Yes, please.
Yes, So I mean, I want to cite a few examples. So just like the case of terrorism, India has been the victim of terrorism for the last 3 odd decades. From 19, I mean, it was there in 1980s also, but 1990 it became very active. But who writes the book on Lashkar-e-Taiba? Christine Fair from America. Where are our people writing books on Jaish-e-Mohammed or Lashkar-e-Taiba or Hizbul Mujahideen? Even on radicalization, until now, like we do, I mean, we don't have a very strong, robust literature on all these issues, like what Tablighi Jamaat is doing. And all the definitions and the standards have been set by the Western thinkers and the academics, especially in the international institutions also. For example, words like nationalism. There's a very common word which is used, by the, especially in the media academia, Hindu nationalist. I'm focusing more on the nationalism. Nationalism is a very problematic word in the European context. Now, in India's case, where we use the word Rashtriya. Rashtriya is not the literal translation of nationalism, because the concept of Rashtra in the ancient times included people belonging to different faiths, different culture, different ideologies, and different religious notions. The kingdom of Ashoka had even Greeks residing in the kingdom of Ashoka, extended from Myanmar to the parts of Central Asia and to parts of Iran. Whereas the concept of nation in Europe means a particular region where people speak one language or follow one particular religion. I think we need to challenge and redefine these definitions. Then the concept of dharma. Dharma doesn't imply religion. Dharma means the right, what is right, the right duty. That is more about the ethics part. That is more about morality. When we equate the word dharma or dharmic with a religion which is used in a very Western sense, then we create confusions. And I think while doing this, we cannot simply be basing our argument on rhetorics. We cannot simply say that all the NGOs working in India, they are all paid agents or they are this and that. That will, that will simply raise serious questions on our democracy. We need to have very quality academic and research work done on these questions and these concepts, which can make an appeal to the academic world across the globe with references.
Very well made and well taken. Savio, 2 minutes if you like to take the floor.
Thank you. Well, one of the main things important, and I agree with Abhinav, is data is very important to bring your point of view across. And there are a lot of people who will indulge in rhetoric. There'll be a rhetoric from all sides, religious rhetorics, academic rhetorics, political rhetorics. But the main aspect that cannot be defied is data. And that's the most important thing. So today, when we say that Christians and Muslims are in danger, I'll give you an example of what I did. Was from 2014 to 2019, I found out the number of cases that were registered against pastors, priests, bishops, cardinals in the Catholic Church, and identified the natures of the crimes. There were about 109 cases that were filed against religious leaders from the Christian community. And out of the 109, 88 were sexual abuse cases. And majority of the sexual abuse cases were minors. So that's when I asked certain leaders within Catholic Church, you say that Christians are in danger in my country, which is also yours, your country. But are they not in the same way in danger in the Catholic churches as well in India? During the time of 2014 to 2019, which was when Prime Minister Modi was in power. So let's not get into, if you want to compete, let's compete on data, let's compete on statistics, let's compete on facts. And I agree with Abhinav over there. There's nothing that convinces more than data and facts that is on the ground and got from the ground. So if we have to change the narrative, we have to make an attempt to lead the narrative in the direction that is in the interest of the people of India, more than what is in the interest of the people from the rest of the world. Because personally, I don't care what the rest of the world thinks about India. What I care about is what I think about myself and what we Indians think about ourselves. That confidence is very important for us.
Thank you. I would first of all like to thank all my co-panelists and Abhinav for the very important inputs and perspectives. I think we have our task cut out. As India rises, there will be opposition. Some is natural, some is contrived, and I think we have to face these headwinds and by following a multi-pronged approach to have an effective counter narrative, by having a judicious mix of what to challenge, what not to challenge, and most of all, to focus on what we are doing, continue to focus on development, continue to take care of the challenges that are within. Okay. Burzine, since you want to say something, please.
Seconds, Ambassador Prakash, and that's it. Year in and out, I have been at the Geneva Human Rights Council symposia. And where is the Indian input on sending someone to combat on the question of Kashmir? You should see the Pakistani contingents and delegations, journalists and what have you, who come in every year to Geneva. And I've been going there since 2014 because I am presenting reports on Balochistan, obviously, for the BHRC, Baloch Human Rights Council. And every time you see the proactive position taken by the Islamabad Foreign Office on Kashmir, there is nobody from India which comes in. And Ambassador Prakash, you reveal your cards at the outset as a diplomat in that we don't want the oxygen of publicity, to use the late Margaret Thatcher's statement, and stoke the situation, and that ignorance may be the best way, and to just relegate Pakistan to the sidelines and not provoke them. That somehow it would stay fine if we don't do so. But that is not going to help in the current context in a digitized world where, of course, these votaries have such a nefarious agenda and are consistently capturing the airwaves and capturing the minds of impressionable sorts on campus. The time has long passed for India to say, no, we are not going to take up Pakistan's bait and let sleeping dogs lie. It sincerely has to change. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. That is very well said. We need also to see how to put across a viewpoint and reiterate it in a way with facts and figures and which is effective. Thank you very much. With this, I turn turn it to give it to hand over to the host.
Thank you very much, sir, for this excellent moderation and for the excellent session. I would also like to thank all our esteemed panelists today for joining us. A lot of interesting viewpoints came out and many takeaways. Definitely. And finally, I would also like to thank all the participants who joined us today for the sessions. Tomorrow we'll begin another session, like another day for our online sessions at 9 in the morning. And tomorrow, Ambassador Puri will be the keynote speaker. After that, we'll have sessions on terrorism and India's relationship with the West Asia. Okay. Please join us tomorrow. Thank you very much. And the registrations are still open in case if anyone has not registered. I guess we'll still be doing some publicity today also. You can can register. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you. God bless. Bye bye.
Thank you to the Usanas Foundation back office staff from all of us for having put across a very seamless webinar and getting us all through the day. So thank you very much to all of them. And needless to say, Abhinav, also to you from all of us here. Thank you.
And just one more thing, I would also like to thank Arun ji, because I must say that Arun ji is also a part of this conference, Maharana Pratap's secretariat, the conference committee. He has been a pillar, he has been an instrumental support in organizing this conference. So, he's a very silent man. He's also a distinguished fellow with us. So my all thanks in regards to him also. Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Abhinav and Usanas Foundation and all the wonderful staff.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you
so
much,
sir.
Thank you.